Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Showtime Forum post-game report. I got my boy Chaz with me. Super excited about this one, of course, for one big reason. We're going back to the Western Conference Finals. Of course, the Lakers took care of business. They did what they had to do in the Game 5. Gentleman sweep, winning the game 119-96, and it wasn't even really close, to be honest with you, man. It was probably one of those ones where, once again, the Lakers kind of let the lead get down to about 7, but then they punched right back, and after that, it was a wrap. And apparently, Houston was not prepared for what we were bringing today, and it showed in every single way. Super excited, man. Chaz, tell me what you thought, what you were feeling. I know you were not nervous at all, so give me your thoughts, man.
I thought the Rockets were going to come out with a little bit more heart. I knew it was important for the Lakers to just stomp on their necks or keep their foot on the gas. Trying to get away from that saying with George Floyd, RIP. Just trying to get away from that. And they just squashed them, just took their will out, let them back in it. That defense in the second quarter was terrible, obviously. But that first quarter couldn't have gone any better. I mean, I think they scored 35 points to 20 in that first quarter. And then from there, it was just sledding from there. I mean, Rondo, obviously didn't have his best game, but was out there being an irritant. Danny Green was who I was most impressed with. KCP, Markieff Morris, mind you, we got him for free from Frank.
That's true.
From Pelinka, obviously, mid-season after getting the buyout in Detroit. So, I mean, and then you got a virtuoso performance from LeBron James. And AD didn't even score a bucket within the first, I think, 10 minutes of the game. And the Lakers were up by 22 at one point in the first quarter. So, I mean, that's the way that they just showed the Clippers how you close out a series. So, the Clippers are going to mess around and possibly, we were just talking offline about this, push it to a game 7, and you saying you're 95% sure. Because of that Rockets series from the Clippers back in 2015. But at the same time, regardless of what happens either way, the Lakers will represent the city of LA in the Western Conference Finals for the first time in a decade. It feels great. I'm happy.
Yep.
I know everybody else is happy. I mean, what more can you really ask for?
Can't ask for much, man. And listen, it's one of those things where when it's been so long, right, since you've been in this position, it feels weird to be happy, right? There's a couple people I know. There's a couple people in the chat already saying they're nervous about the next round. And here's what we got to keep in perspective, man. What we did in these last 2 series, losing the first game, coming back and winning the next 4, shows you that the Lakers have fight in them. Of course, there's a lot more that is going to be at stake, of course, against the Clippers. The hardest team that we're probably going to face all season is the other LA team. But what we saw mentally is that this team knows how to handle trash talk. They know how to handle pressure. They know how to handle elimination games, which we have seen, just throwing it out there, going back to my 95%, which we have seen other teams not be able to handle. In fact, the Lakers have lost a 3-1 lead. If we can't, go back in time, we remember when we lost a 3-1 lead to the Suns. So there are teams that are not able to handle leads like that, and they crumble beneath the pressure. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the Clippers. I'm 95% sure they're going to win the game tomorrow, but it's also a possibility they may not. And so it could end up being a 3-3 series, and then who knows what happens in that game 7. So we're preparing for the Clippers, but it's very possible that we may not have that. What's funny is I'm going to read this quote. This has nothing to do with anything, but it just popped up on Twitter. So, of course, the Houston Rockets, their season is over, and the first question that goes to D'Antoni was if small ball works in the playoffs. And this is D'Antoni's response. Ask the Lakers. That's what they beat us with. And it's so funny that he says that because
Ooh,
it was not small ball that we beat them with. You can't call it small ball with Anthony Davis and Markieff Morris and all of the length that we have. To say that we didn't use all of our bigs is one thing. But had they shifted and had they had a big, had they still had Capella on the team, we would have adjusted to that. The reason why we won wasn't because we played their game. We won because we are better at executing and making adjustments, which the Rockets did not do the entire series. Their goal was to shoot as many threes as possible, run with analytics based on Daryl Morey and D'Antoni's offense, putting those things together and trying to put as many shooters on the floor. And they wanted to see if it was going to work, and it did not work. We abused them in the paint. That's not small ball play. We abused them on rebounds. That's not small ball play.
nope.
We won this game because we played defense better, we adjusted better, and just being just brutally honest, we had the better players. And we showed that today, and it shows in the stats. The Lakers shot 19 of 37 from three, while the Rockets shot 13 of 49. So if you want to know if small ball works, the answer is no. Small ball does not work. Neither does shooting almost 50 threes and only making 26% of them, as opposed to the Lakers, who made 51% out of their 37 three-point attempts. Let me get to some of these real quick. First, hold on. Let's just do this. Let me hop into this real quick. We do have this. The topics that we have today is another blowout win. What does that mean? Chaz, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about AD's struggles. AD wasn't necessarily at his tip-top shape today. He did have a fairly decent game, but it wasn't anything that we would expect out of him in a game 5 elimination game. 3-point barrage, in case you didn't know, Lakers did set a record
Shoot
for
over
the franchise.
50%.
Yeah, shooting over 50%. 19 3-pointers made, I believe, is the record for us, and it broke a record today. And then the real question is, what's next? What do we need to do, and how do we adjust from there? So let me throw some questions at you, Chaz. First, another blowout win. So my question is, how do you handle going into the next round knowing that you won as easily as you did in the prior round?
So it's really just about preparation. And a lot of these guys on the coaching staff have been assigned either the Nuggets or the Clippers at this point. They'll start their prep. They won't hone in on one team or the other until one of them win, obviously, but you're going to get some prep from the Clippers, a little bit more than the Nuggets, but they obviously are going to divvy up those responsibilities tonight, as soon as their meetings and everything is all over. So, but how do you prepare for it? I mean, I think you go back to what has worked for you all series long. Really, at the end of the day, it's going to be about playing with size, playing with length, playing defense on the interior, and scoring in the paint, as well as making shots. So, at the end of the day, KCP, Rondo, Kuz, and Danny Green on the perimeter, and JaVale, Dwight, and AD anchoring that inside position. So everybody else flying around from there, and just do what you do. The defense, this was probably our worst defensive game, even worse than the first game of the series when the Rockets got off for 100 points. But this time, that second quarter was just terrible. And there were some times early in the fourth quarter where we're just trading baskets because we were just going through the motions because, I mean, you got to question the heart of not Russell Westbrook specifically, but the team goes by how the leader goes. And James Harden's demeanor isn't that of even a LeBron James. You want to say LeBron doesn't have any heart. I mean, if anybody ever questioned LeBron's killer instinct, I mean, James Harden has, I mean, he already knows he has a bunch of questions about that. That's been the story of his postseason career. But at this point, it's just, I mean, it's glaring. And I don't know if now at this point, I don't want to be disrespectful, but you have to ask the question. It's fair to ask the question. Can James Harden be the best player on a championship team? There are very few that can be that.
That's real talk. That's real talk.
And you have to be able to ask that question at this point. He's 1-6 in his last 7 closeout games, and the only win came against the OKC Thunder that really they should have swept. I mean, if you really take a look at it, that's a team that they should have swept. If you take a look at the end of Game 3 and Game 4 as well. So, I feel for Houston Rockets fans. I know they just say that Alex Caruso is just a G League player. I mean, he got off for 16 last game, and tonight
5.
He got off for 5, but at the end of the day, he's also still he was a -4, but Danny Green a +35, KCP a +32, AD a +29, only 13 points. I mean,
Yeah.
and guys are hitting their free throws too tonight. I don't know what's gotten in to the team in the last few games, but I think they're shooting over 80% for the last 2 games combined. So
Yeah. Yeah.
props to those guys. But that's how you move forward. You just can continue to do what you've been doing and lock in, hone in on whoever the next opponent is, and it's business as usual. One last thing I want to say about it as well is it's crazy when you look back. I mean, if you're looking at, if you're looking at Access Sportnet, or if you're looking at any of these backstage Laker shows about previous championship runs, like the early 2000s with Kobe and Shaq. I mean, you think about that Phoenix series in 2000 against Jason Kidd, and you think about, maybe the Sacramento Kings series in maybe 2001, which we swept. You're going to look back at maybe this championship run if and when the Lakers win the championship. Portland and Houston in 5 games, it's going to look like they didn't even stand a chance.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, they probably didn't.
They didn't. And I'm going to tell you why they didn't stand a chance. Because of this face right here. Do you see the look on that man's face? The look on that. And listen, this was going into the 4th quarter. And we had already had a huge double-digit lead. And that right there is the demeanor that you want to see from your leadership, man. That's the kind of mentality that I want to see. And I want to see that from game 1 opening tip-off in this next series. I want to ask this question. In regards to AD, because we're getting ready to get into these comments. So many comments already hopping in. But AD struggled. AD struggled today, and he didn't look like he really had his thing going. And it makes you wonder, anytime we see AD or even LeBron struggle, we're trying to find a reason that can validate it so we don't get worried that he's going to randomly turn into like a James Harden, if you will.
Oh, there is no reason to even think that. There's no reason. I'm sorry. I'm going to just jump on you on that. But
no. I want you to help address the people in the crowd. There's been a lot of Twitter chatter during the game. Is AD turning into Harden? And so I just want to throw that question to you and see how you would respond to that.
Absolutely not. AD does much more than just score the basketball. He anchors the defense. There's a reason why he's a plus 29 in the game and only took 9 shots, made almost half of them, still shot almost 50% from the field, took 6 free throws, made 5 of them, shot over 90%, and played good defense. Had over 10 rebounds, had 11 rebounds, 2 of them offensively, 4 assists, of which was in the first quarter because he was just dishing out. I mean, when the team is hot, you got to think about it. When guys are making shots, they don't need AD as much, right? True. AD is there to clean things up. And if there's nothing to clean up, right, and LeBron is going off for 15 points in the first quarter, that's the thing. When LeBron gets off and he gets in that zone early, it's great for LeBron and great for our team, but not necessarily great for AD because AD doesn't really get into a rhythm because he's obviously most offensive players and all basketball players are rhythm players. So when you're not getting the ball and you're not in a rhythm, obviously you're not going to make a bunch of shots right off top. But, I mean, it was just one of those games where it just wasn't needed. Kuz was hitting shots, KCP's hitting shots, Danny Green's hitting shots. I mean, Caruso's hitting a few threes. Markieff Morris got 16 points. I mean, that's 5 guys that are all in double figures for the game. I mean,
in your starting lineup.
Yeah, it's just overkill at that point. So.
Just overkill. And yeah, I agree, man. I think AD did exactly what is necessary. And this team has been built really about doing what's necessary in the game. And I think that's going to be a transition of mindset for a lot of us NBA fans where we're used to seeing 2 or 3 stars go off and do their thing. Obviously, that is something that can be celebrated. But when you have a team that is built differently, as LeBron says, then you're looking for the other pieces to do what's necessary as well. Caruso only had 5 points, but he was just as impactful as when he hit that huge 3 the last game. So you know that like when it's necessary and it's needed, they're going to step up. Danny Green once again stepped up, like you said. And we talked about this. What happens when a Danny Green and a KCP get it going in the starting lineup and you make adjustments? And this team is really starting to get it going in the playoffs. This is the first time this team has really had this much consistency. Rotations are being set. They were adjusted. The question I would ask, if we want to just kind of throw to the what's next and on the next part of the topic list, is do you change this lineup? Do you take Markieff Morris, who was 4-4 from 3 and helped stretch the floor? Do you take him away when you're playing against the Clippers, or do you save him for the bench? How do you manage going into the next round when you have essentially another big who's shined in his moment in the starting lineup?
They play Zubac, they being the Clippers. I mean, and they being the Nuggets as well. And the Nuggets have Jokic, so they have both teams have a solid center that's above 7 foot. So you slide JaVale back into the 5 spot. AD obviously stays at the 4. Markieff Morris and Kyle Kuzma come off the bench with playoff Rondo.
Yep.
And you go back to what got you here initially. So that's a simple answer for me. Dwight Howard is going to come into the game and match up with Montrezl Harrell when he comes in the game, because he's a 6-man for the Clippers as well. I'm 100%. I can't even say 100%. 99.9% sure the Clippers are going to beat the Nuggets tomorrow. So that's why I'm just talking from a Clippers perspective.
I got you.
And I want the Clippers. I don't even want the Nuggets. I'm going to be pissed if the Nuggets win, honestly, because all the stuff that we've heard as Laker fans coming from this Clippers camp, who's never made it to a Western Conference final, get to your first Western Conference final, so that way we can knock you out. And that way you could take those banners in 4 years and take them down to Inglewood into that new stadium or that new arena that Bombers building for you guys. So that way you can stop covering up our banners. So that's really ultimately what I want. So let's have those guys come out 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for you Laker fans that are, up, maybe not doing anything, maybe catching the first football game of the year for your team, whoever that may be.
Yep.
Tune into the Clipper game and see the Clippers squash the Nuggets. If that game is close at the end, I initially said that the series was going to go 7. So
it wouldn't shock me.
But at the same time, I'm looking for the Clippers to just come out, impose their will, and for Lou Williams to play better. I mean, the guy's like 2 for 21 from 3 for the series. So
not just the series. Since he got back from the strip club.
Oh, since the bubble. Yeah, I mean, Lemon Pepper Lou has not been hot. So this isn't a Clipper show, but I'm speaking positive about them because I want them to get to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
I want to be the team that replaces them, knocks them out. And I was rooting for the Celtics last night only because I want them to go to the finals so that way we can knock them out as well. What a great 2020 it would be if we could knock out the Clippers and the Celtics along the same playoff championship run for number 17.
Absolutely. Here are some of the questions here, or some of the comments. We have Adam24 off of YouTube. Go Lakers. Let's win this one for Kobe. Of course, Kobe Bean is all over the Lakers jerseys, is on their minds. They're constantly talking about that. Of course, that makes a difference and even motivation. James Michael from Periscope asked me, how is it there in Houston? Am I going down to the Toyota Center? Let me just tell you, Houston really could care less. I've been driving around. I've gone to the store. We've been around. There's no banners. There's no buzz whatsoever about the Rockets in the playoffs. And even when you look at Houston Twitter, which is location based for me, so that's all I see, there's no talk about the Rockets in the playoffs. And so, unfortunately,
they know what's good. They're honest with themselves.
They are.
Great. And
self-awareness, and 75% of the city are really Laker fans, just being honest. And so they've been here, done that. They've seen it. They've experienced heartbreak before. And most of them had already set themselves up for a disappointing round in. Blake St. Clair, goodbye, Coach D'Antoni and James Harden. The D is silent. Or Antoni. Yeah, they just asked James Harden if he wanted to have D'Antoni back. He said yes.
What did he say?
He said yeah. He said of course. But it of course he does, because this system benefits James Harden more than any other system in the NBA. It is Harden specific. And which is why he's able to score the way he does and things like that. His scoring totals will go down if they replace him with a different coach who doesn't run a majority 3 quick 6-second offense that D'Antoni runs. And so, of course, he wants him back. I don't think it's going to happen. But Harden also said that they need to be surrounded. They need to surround him and Westbrook with other types of players. And that the Daniel House situation was a very distracting thing. Um, I don't know how else to say it, but I don't think Daniel House was going to make a difference in what happened tonight. In fact, some of the people who came in for garbage minutes were shooting better threes than Daniel House was. So let that be something we can all chew on. 24K Petty, great win, Cousins. I'm already stressed for the next round. Ease my mind, please. I'm telling you, we're getting ready to jump into that right now. We're gonna hop over to our Prophet Chaz segment, and he's gonna give us the Prophet Pearson. He's gonna give us the good projection into the next part of the playoffs. Hamad from Periscope, Talon is crowned prince. Now, what do you think about that? About THT, second game in a row, getting minutes. He had 10 minutes tonight. It was solid, right? So what are we looking for him in the Clippers series?
Nothing. He won't get any run. I'm just going to be honest. He only got run because they went small and it was conducive to the lineup that Vogel was trying to run. The Clippers have too much size and length for THT, for a rookie, and to be in such a big spot. No, he's not getting any run in this series. The lineup might tighten a little bit more. I don't think we'll see some guys as much. Caruso is probably going to get a lot more playing time than he maybe did the last two series because of the perimeter defender that we need. So Rondo, Caruso, Kuz, KCP, Danny Green, Keith, LeBron, AD, JaVale, Dwight. That's it.
And based upon that, just what you said there, I mean, for those people, they were all plus 20 minutes tonight. They all played above 20 minutes tonight, which looks like a good setup for what the Clippers are going to be. Obviously, way more than that for Davis and James. LeBron and AD obviously sat once the game was in hand. LeBron only playing 31 minutes and Davis 34. So you'll see those minutes adjusted a little bit more in the Clipper series. But you're right. But it was good to see THT, man, going 4 of 7, 1 of 2 from 3. There was a beautiful play where he got set up from by Kuz.
Beautiful.
Did a beautiful spin into the
corner
paint.
three.
Corner three, kicks it out, and took his time with it and did it. And there's no moment that seems too big for him. He obviously is very rough around the ends, but this is going to be so valuable going forward for the Laker franchise in 2 to 3 years. That this guy is getting some great experiences and some opportunities that most rookies at 19 would never get an opportunity to do. So, he's obviously not going to be a Kobe, but I could see him with his length of his arms and his wingspan being like a Lamar Odom, being able to get his own shot off the dribble like he's obviously been able to do and shoot the three. If he can do that and defend, that's the biggest thing. He had 2 fouls in the 10 minutes that he was in. If he can defend a little bit better and not be so undisciplined with his hands, that dude can do something really great. My boy James White, I am currently trolling Rockets fans. I may be up all night. I'm with you, man.
They talk a lot of stuff, and I don't know why they talk so much. They don't have a lot to really be proud of. I mean, granted, they've been in the playoffs and they've been, what would you rather be? Would you rather be the Lakers who haven't been in the playoffs in 7 years, and then when they do, they finally get to Western Conference Final right off the bat? Or would you rather be the Rockets who are banging on the door year after year after year for that same amount, almost a decade, 7 years at least, and not even sniff a finals? So I don't know.
Yeah. I'd rather struggle. When you can rest on 16 championships, you know what your pedigree is. For the Houston Rockets, they've had minimal success when it comes down to bringing in titles, and so you have nothing really to rest on outside of you're trying to pioneer a new way. And they tried with the small ball offense and getting rid of Clint Capella. Everybody scratched their heads about that. But I would rather be with the tried and true, even if it means going through 6 or 7 years of being in the desert. But they tried it. They tried it. Leonard Buchanan says, looked great tonight. Love seeing THT play so well. Secret weapon. Leslie Johnson says, Lakers in 6. Can you make a prediction on the next round about what you think, how many games it's going to take for us to win?
7.
7 games. You think it's going to go full 7?
7. If we beat them in anything less than 7 games, you guys aren't going to want to hear from me. I mean, I'm going to have so much stuff to talk. I mean, if you can't even get us to a 7th game and we close you out in 6, I don't even want to think about 5, and 4 is obviously not even possible. I respect Doc Rivers too much alone to even think about that. But 7 games is what it's going to take, and it's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be Ali Frazier. It's going to be, I mean, it's going to be Clippers Lakers like we've never seen it before, ever,
Yeah.
ever. So what we thought that we were going to get in 2006 will be magnified by probably 100 because we have not only star players on the line but legacies on the line. I mean, Kawhi and LeBron both are both going to be the first, probably going to be one of the first players to have a Finals MVP for three different teams. So they're fighting for that. Obviously, LeBron has, in my opinion, more to lose and more to gain.
Yeah.
Right? He just has so much more to gain because that cements his legacy that much further.
Yeah.
Right? And especially doing it with and resurrecting a franchise that's an iconic franchise that lost their probably, I mean, and from Magic Johnson's words, the greatest Laker ever.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
some people might disagree with me on that. Me personally, I think Kobe's the greatest Laker ever. Magic himself said it. Obviously, you know, he's going to defer to the next guy. But either way, we're all family at the end of the day. But it's really important. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that LeBron knows how important it is, not even for just his legacy, but he's a historian of the game. So he knows the history of the Lakers and the Celtics going all the way back to the 60s and leading up till now,
Yeah.
along with his personal legacy. So, man, it's just very important that we get past this team, still be the team in LA,
Yeah.
and get to that finals. That's all that's
And,
important.
and speaking of the legacy, D Million on Periscope says if LeBron wins the chip with the Lakers, it's over. He's the GOAT. Period. I know
A
a
lot
lot
of
of
people
people feel
saying
that.
that.
Yeah, a
A
lot
lot
of
of
people
people
feel
say
this
that.
way. Now, mind you, he wouldn't be the first person to win a championship with the third team. Robert Horry has done it, and others have done it. But obviously, LeBron would be one of the first to do it, leading a team.
As a
But you
finals
know,
MVP.
yeah, and just even going back to to Kobe comment, you're right. I mean, it's debatable about who the greatest Laker is. I don't think it's debatable about who had the greatest individual impact. Magic Johnson, of course, being a part of the Showtime Lakers. But when you think about those two championship runs that Kobe was a part of, the name that sticks out individually, without question, is Kobe Bryant. When you think about Showtime Lakers, you think about James Worthy, you think about Kareem, you think about Magic, you think about Byron Scott, you even think about Michael Thompson for all that, all intents and
Great
purposes.
team.
But great teams, incredible teams. But when you talk about individual impact on the game, in the city, overseas, just individual, Kobe Bryant had
China.
more responsibility on his shoulders in his 20-year career than I think any other NBA player in history. And so it is. This means a lot. It means a lot to resurrect a franchise. In fact, somebody says, D on Periscope says the Showtime Forum team are going to the Western Conference Finals. And it's true, man. We feel like we're a part of this team just as much
Yeah.
as Brian Cook was or Jordan Farmar. We feel like we get to contribute in some way, shape, or form, and we appreciate you guys being a part of this. Anakat Mohan, good to see you. YouTube says dominant. Dominant.
Dominant.
What's the one word you would call the series for the Lakers so far? What's the one word that describes it all?
Focus. I would say that they were just so focused and locked in. I didn't get to see the first game. I was on the road. I was heading to Vegas, so I didn't get to see the game. I got to listen to it. Thank you, John Ireland, for painting a clear picture for me. I was pissed listening to that game going through, so I'm actually glad that I didn't watch it. But the four other games that I just saw over the course of the last week, I mean, it was all good just a week ago for the Rockets. And, I mean, now you look up 7 days and you're out of the bubble going back home.
Yeah.
That's the Lake Show for you. Lakers streamed off 4 in a row on you easily. Why? Because they were locked in and they were focused on the assignment on the defensive end, knowing that offensively it was going to come. Why? Because they have their leader in LeBron to be able to facilitate everything, and they have this probably the second best IQ player in the series as well, in Rondo, who showed up in a major way, not only offensively but defensively and coaching wise, and making his assists and getting AD involved. I mean, I think he threw at least 3 lobs to AD since he's been back. I mean, solid lot. I mean, he even threw one off the glass to LeBron in that last game. So, I mean, hats off to Rondo. And, man, him and Patrick Beverly in this next round.
It's gonna be
Man,
crazy. It's gonna be crazy,
man.
man.
I just need the Clippers to handle business 10 a.m. So by 12:30 noon time, we can do the official prep.
Yeah.
And shout out to Chris Camello. Me and Chris Camello are going to get together in the next 48 hours, assuming that the Clippers handle business. We're going to do a podcast, and we'll drop that for you guys as well.
Be on the lookout for that podcast. It's on all the basic sites you can go to: Spotify, iTunes, and of course Anchor, which kind of houses our podcast. So please tune into that. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Subscribe to that. Blake St. Clair, same things as the last two series. Have to keep the intensity high leading into game one. Can't keep losing the first game almost automatically because you don't meet the opposition with fire. Western Conference and finals, every game counts even more. And in fact, LeBron just addressed that with the media. And he says they asked him if they have surpassed their regular season peak in March.
Nope.
Of course, that's when they were. Yeah, and he says, I don't know, but I believe right now we're playing good ball. It's so hard to think back to who we were. It's been a long year. We're just playing good ball at the right time. And the sacrifice that the guys have to make throughout this playoff run, the commitment that you have to make on and off the floor, and you have to be locked in on the job and task at hand. And he's speaking about the playoff run and what it's going to take for the remaining of the playoffs. So it's going to take a lot, man. It's more. It's more than just playing basketball, as we saw with the Daniel House situation.
I would say this. I'm not scared if the Lakers drop game one, regardless of who it is.
Right.
In the finals, I'm just talking about this next series. I'm not surprised if they drop game one because LeBron himself says game one is always a fill-out game for him. Yeah. So I won't be surprised. I will be very impressed if they do win game one of the Western Conference Finals. I'll be very impressed. That last game in the bubble, they didn't have Sweet Lou. They didn't have Montrez. I don't think they had Beverly either. Not sure.
And we only won by 2, 103 to 101.
And we only won by 2. So that's the only thing that's in the back of my head personally on that. But I know that we played these guys tough in every game that we've had. We've actually had leads in the first 2 games that we blew in the fourth quarter. So I'm not scared whatsoever. It's going to go 7 if we face the Clippers. If we face the Nuggets, I mean, that's 5 games. You saw what we did to them in the regular season.
Yeah.
Denver and Utah, they're just bad matchups because they play big guys. And when you play big guys and your big guy just isn't as good as our big guy, and our big guy can take you and space you out and give you the 1-2 Phil Handy with the step back move and then block all the shots on the other side of the court. I mean, it's just not much you can really do about that. So same thing with the Clippers, but at least they have the length to be able to, throw multiple guys at us and make it a little bit more competitive. So either way, Lakers are in a great position. And even better that Miami and Boston are on the other side of that bracket because
this is when the NBA it's going to be the most beautiful NBA basketball over the next several weeks is watching these teams. Eastern Conference looks amazing and tremendous. Western Conference is set up for something that we've been waiting on since game 1 of the season, let alone the bubble. The Clippers versus Lakers right now. It seems like it's going to be set up. And then, of course, whoever gets to the finals out of that. Could you imagine a Miami versus Lakers? Seeing LeBron against his old franchise and going against Jimmy Buckets? Could you imagine a Boston? Coach Spoelstra? Rockets. Who is that? Celtics versus Lakers would be one of the perfect ways to end the longest season in NBA history. So it's beautiful basketball from here on out. But let me just ease your mind, okay? Because Anakat had already asked the question, can Chaz the Prophet give his prediction? He just gave his prediction against the Clippers and the Nuggets. But let me just ease your mind. It's not going to be easy like it has been these last 2 series. Okay? No. So it's gonna be a dogfight. There's gonna be some games where you're screaming at the screen. And it's okay, all right? Just don't lose heart if the Lakers have bad runs or if they, let go of 16-point leads. But somebody did mention something that I think is going to be the difference in whoever we end up playing. And I think it was Blake St. Clair who said that. Let me find that comment. He said, I'll say it. James Harden is a pathetic team leader. No effort, and on one end of the court and on the other, he just shoots in bad shots, hoping for foul bailouts. Now that's pretty brutal. Pretty brutal.
Ben Golliver just said that tweeted that James Harden said that they're one piece away apparently. So
Yeah, and the difference is the owners of the Rockets are not going to hear the same excuse. There's a reason why they didn't give D'Antoni a contract extension.
Fertitta does
And
not want to hear that, but not
nope.
with what his luxury tax bill looks like right now. We're one piece away. I got all the pieces. What do you mean? I traded 2 first-round picks for Russell Westbrook, and we're still one piece away. I mean,
Yeah.
damn. I'm paying paying both you guys $80 million a piece. Combined.
Yeah.
I mean, geez.
Yeah, and especially when you just watched a team who essentially paid for 2 big superstars, and everybody else was kind of just getting low money, with the exception of Danny Green. You've seen it work with 2 superstars, and they just handed you a gentleman sweep 5-1 or 4-1 in a game 5. So no matter what they're saying, D'Antoni is he has to be gone. I can't imagine them bringing him back. And we'll see how it affects their roster and the whole nine. Anakim Mohan, all that Danny Green slander worked. Listen, I don't think it worked necessarily. I think Danny Green actually had to tune us out because you could tell it was getting to him. He called us spoiled fans. He was getting on the podcast, calling us all sorts of names. But he did his thing tonight. He was 4 of 6 from the 3-point line, 14 points. He was a plus 35. He shot with confidence. He shot in rhythm. There was even 1 3-point shot where it was the end of the clock, and he had a hand in his face from Eric Gordon and still did what he had to do.
Talked a little shit.
Yeah, doing his thing. And what you want to see is that going forward. The last time you played the Clippers, Anthony Davis had to score 34 points just for us to beat him by 2. And like you said, there was no Trez and there was no Lou. And you're right. I'm not sure if Beverly was in it. If he wasn't memorable. So you have to remember that like what the Lakers are dealing with going in is going to be far different. Of course, on our side, we didn't have Rondo. So having playoff Rondo, even though he didn't do as much tonight, he did exactly what we needed him to do. He facilitated. He got into underneath the skin of the other players. He got them off their game. He did what he needed to do. And we're expecting him to be honest with you, a more conditioned, a wiser Patrick Beverly on our side. Rondo knows how to talk mess without getting a tech, unlike his brother on the sideline today. But we're expecting the Lakers to have. Obviously we don't have Avery Bradley, but we do have the emergence of Morris, who's going to be able to match up with his twin brother on the other side. We do have Rondo, who is able to handle the pressure of the second unit, get Bron some rest, and allow him to IQ the game a little bit more. Anthony Davis, there really is nobody on the other side that can match up with him. Dwight Howard obviously has the strength, even though they may not have the speed, but neither does Zubats. So we're talking about 2 different teams built 2 different ways, but they both have the opportunity to take advantage of this moment, and it's really going to be about who wants it more. And I'm going to tell you what I think the secret weapon is they have nobody like Alex Caruso on their side. That's my honest to God opinion. Alex Caruso is such a undercover difference that you can't compare him to anybody on the other side.
You just think about it, like right now, LeBron James is elevating Danny Green, KCP, Caruso, Markieff Morris, Kyle Kuzma. Those are 5 guys. 5 solid guys that are playing great basketball all at one time.
Yeah.
That are making shots, that are hitting more than 50% of their threes in this last game, or last 2 games, I believe. I don't even know what they're shooting for the series, but they got to be shooting better than 40% from 3. Because guys we had 6 guys in double figures tonight. Yeah. So when you're having 5 solid guys, Kuz, Caruso, Danny Green, KCP, Markieff Morris, and then 6 guys, Rondo, to go with LeBron and AD, and then you didn't even have to play Dwight and JaVale. I mean, that's 10 solid guys that could possibly be playing great basketball in this next series. Let's just say 7 of them play great ball and 3 of them are I mean, it's going to be really tough for the Clippers to be. And then you're going to have LeBron taking it personal. Like, this is the LeBron that we signed for that 4-year max deal. Like, we're going to see LeBron like we've never seen him before in a Laker uniform. We haven't seen him the way that we've seen him. Just in these last 10 games in the playoffs. When he faces Kawhi for the chip on the line, I mean, this next series with the Clippers win in the morning is pretty much for the chip.
Yeah.
Because the Miami Heat and the Boston Celtics cannot mess with the Lakers depth-wise, talent-wise. No. I mean, maybe coaching-wise they might be able to mess because Spo's a championship coach and Brad Stevens not a championship coach, but obviously has some really good experience and is a respected coach in the league.
Absolutely.
I mean, but they're not going to take the Lakers and the Clippers to, on the brink. It's just not. So for all intents and purposes, just like 2000 was, Portland Trailblazers, Los Angeles Lakers, Game 7, this is going to go Game 7 as well. And in my opinion, the Western Conference Finals is the championship in my eyes.
There it is. There it is. I absolutely agree. Here, I'm trying to go through some of these that don't. 8 wins down, 8 to go by D100.
Halfway there.
Halfway there, man. And if you guys haven't seen on the Lakers account, they've shown that there's a board in the back where they count each win. And it's not to get ahead of themselves, but it's to keep them focused on what the goal is. Every win, even tonight, wasn't the end goal. It is a part of a journey towards something that every team is trying to attain, and now it is down. Essentially, it's going to be down to the last 4 teams out of a 32 game or 32 team season. And so this is what you fight for. You said it. This is why you signed LeBron. Whatever you may feel about him prior to this, whatever you may feel about the way he leads, and there's been plenty of commentary about LeBron in comparison to Kobe and all that stuff like that. LeBron is doing what nobody else in the league would be able to do for this franchise: handle the weight of wearing the Laker brand, and then being able to traverse the worst possible NBA season with the death of Kobe Bryant and the emergence of the pandemic, and then having to play in a bubble away from your family, no home court advantage, which you worked so hard for, losing one of your best defenders going into the bubble. No other team has had to deal with that. And you need to have somebody who has the mentality and really the mental stamina to be able to handle that burden. And that's why you sign him. You sign him for that reason. And he surrounded himself with championship pedigree, mentally stable guys, man. Rondo, Green. These are guys who've been there, done that with him before, or at least have been to championships and have done the championship thing before. That makes a difference.
Keep saying it's not just playoff experience; it's championship finals experience.
And it's going to make a difference.
Another level, another notch. Let me ask you this, though. No, don't mean to cut you off, but how do you think, if there was no bubble and we were in home arenas and fans were in the building, how do you think that would have changed this series or this postseason? I think overall for the entire NBA, how do you think it would have changed?
I think it would have exposed the emotional players more. And I think it would have fueled the emotionally disciplined people more. So like people like LeBron and things like that who know how to take in the emotions of the crowd from the away crowd and the home crowd and be able to feed off of that, which he's been known to do. Playing in the Boston series, playing in the Pacers series, he's shown that he's able to handle that kind of pressure. People who are less emotionally controlled, like a Russell Westbrook, a James Harden, it would have exposed them way earlier. I'm not sure, just being honest. They make it out of the last series having to deal with being in the other arena. I think it played to their strength a little bit more being in neutral ground. I'll say
this: OKC doesn't go 7, they lose in less than 7. Miami doesn't beat the Bucks because they have a bunch of young players that would have been on the road their first time. Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. I mean, that's a lot of young guys. Kendrick Nunn to go on the road and beat the
looks like we're losing.
Denver and Utah.
There we go. Got you back.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Denver and Utah. I don't think it goes 7 games either. So, and then the Lakers, it goes 4 or 5 in both of these series. Either way, bubble or no bubble. I mean, yeah, that's the beauty of what the Lakers are doing. They're playing the exact kind of basketball that they would play probably if there was fans. So that's what I'm definitely proud about that.
Yeah, and we just to remind everybody, we had one of the best away from home records. I think if anybody in the league, if anybody remembers, man, we went a long stretch before we even lost an away game. If people can remember that, or essentially the only game that we really lost for a long stretch was the home opener against the Clippers in Staples. It was their home game, but then after that we were on the road and we were terrorizing teams. It took a while before we had our first loss, so we can handle that.
Did we not lose in Indiana?
Oop, you cut out again. Say it again.
I was going to say, was it that Indiana game?
It was the Indiana game where we lost handily. It wasn't even pretty. So, and we thought we were going to tear him limb from limb. But, it happens. Here we go. Here it goes. Still would be great to see AD and LeBron two-man takeover from time to time, but I think AD really just really doesn't like playing five, so he regresses a little bit at times. And yeah, this is probably the longest stretch of time he's had to play five as consistently as he did. So I'm not sure if that's going to be even a thing as much in the Clipper series. Him being a stretch forward that's far better in against the Clippers than obviously it would against the Rockets. So I don't think we're going to see much of him at five. You don't
You
think
agree
so?
with that?
I don't necessarily.
I don't agree with that.
I don't agree with the digression as much, but I do know that he's been pretty vocal about his desire to play his original position, and when I hear that kind of talk, it does let me know the tone of thinking. Now he's changed that, and we've gotten to the series, and he goes, "I just want to win," and yada yada. But you can tell that that's conversation that has happened internally that has switched that perspective. But even when we signed him, there was a lot of conversation about him playing five, and he was kind of rejecting that notion.
Either way, he played 77% of his minutes at the five.
Yeah.
During this series, and averaged almost 30, and has averaged 30 and 12 on 55% field goal percent shooting, and 2 blocks a game for the postseason. So,
and I ain't gonna lie, they've been beating the bejesus out of him. I don't know how many times I've seen him had to get off the court. Tonight he had to get off the court. He got hit in the nose, almost drew blood. Before that, got hit in the chops. They giving it to him underneath, and you better believe Trez is going to be far more brutal than anybody.
Yeah, I was just
about
to say that. Just about to say that I'm glad they got 3 days off. Hopefully the Clippers win tomorrow, so that way they don't have 5 days off. I think that's a little bit too much, but they're going to get a good solid 3 days off, and hopefully Clippers take care of business, and it's going to be a fireworks show starting Wednesday.
Absolutely. I'm just trying to get some of these people that we have not seen in a while. Oof, I don't want to hear about that. King James in the building. Westbrook talking. Crap talk is cheap from D Million. And Westbrook is going to talk. It's what makes Westbrook Westbrook. His passion is undeniable. But to be honest, he might have been one of the bigger reasons why the Rockets were unable to get it going. Because this is where Chris Paul, when he was here in Houston, was able to kind of take some of the load off of James Harden when he wasn't hitting. And we're seeing Chris Paul even 3 years later or 2 years later doing great things in the playoffs. Of course, they're already home. But that's a huge difference between Westbrook and Chris Paul, completely different playing styles. But it's going to be what it's going to be. Where does Russ? The gang is looking Brolick. I think we might be Brolick. Sorry, I can't talk. I think we might be gelling at the right time. Are we? Do you feel like we're still peaking? We still have some room to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron. So to me, I think that the Lakers are playing better than the Clippers right now because they had to go up against the two-headed monster and Dame and CJ playing the best basketball in the bubble and having to get punched in the mouth first playoff game off top. And then going right after that and having to play a team with 2 MVPs on it.
Yeah. Oh, looks like we lost.
My bad. You still there?
Yep. There you go. Okay.
Okay. My bad. Denver and the Mavericks, good teams, but they're not Portland and Houston, in my opinion. So the Clippers have had it just a little bit easier, and they've been able to kind of coast a little bit more, and the Lakers have had to lock in a little bit more, and that's why they're playing a little bit better basketball than the Clippers right now. So I would say that the Clippers just are needing a little bit more fine-tunage.
Yeah.
They're playing well as well. It's the Clippers and the Lakers than everybody else. It's not even close, in my opinion. I mean, the Miami Heat played very well, but I mean, they just exposed the Milwaukee Bucks, who were just a front-running regular season team, like the Atlanta Hawks team of 2015, I believe it was, when they won 60-plus games and had 4 All-Stars and lost in the semis or the conference finals against LeBron. So, I mean, and the Celtics, they struggle with the Raptors, and the Raptors are a good, solid team, but they're not pushing the Lakers or the Clippers to 7 games. So, like I said, this next series is for the chip.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And interesting stat here, man, that I didn't even realize. Portland Trailblazers had the best offense in the bubble when the playoffs began. Houston had the best defense in the bubble when the playoffs began. And Lakers eliminated both teams in 5 games. That's from Matthew Moreno on Twitter. Interesting stat. And here's one thing that we got to just remind ourselves, just so we know. This is the furthest that Anthony Davis has ever gone in the playoffs in his NBA career.
You love to see it.
Yeah, you're about to see it. This will be LeBron's 11th. Just think about that. The 11th time that LeBron has been to a conference final game or series, and the first time for Anthony Davis. How much is that going to play a difference in how they operate?
Not much, because LeBron gets on AD and they hold each other accountable. I tweeted out during the game, I love that LeBron gets on AD, and when he gets mad at him and he's out of position or whatever, because AD he accepts it, he respects it, and then he goes out and applies whatever it is that LeBron has said to him. I mean, I love the respect and I love the relationship that these guys have for one another. And I love the fact that Anthony Davis was bold enough to switch up his agent. It's almost 2 years. Mind you, like, it's been 6 months since the hiatus began, and another 6 months before that when the season or training camp began. And another year before that when Anthony Davis switched up and went to clutch. So it's been 2 years in the making, and Anthony Davis is just now having the move pay off. I mean, obviously, as soon as he put on a Laker jersey, the move paid off. Yeah. But now you're envisioning what you would see him doing in a Laker uniform, putting up 30 and 12 and 2 blocks, and running through the playoffs. I mean, 5 games in both series is nothing to sneeze at. I mean, 8-2 in the playoffs is. I mean, who else is 8-2 in the playoffs so far? Yeah. I mean, other than Miami, nobody else.
That's true talk, man. That's true talk. And just a little insight, kind of switching gears a little bit, that it finally came out from Mark J. Spears about what happened between Rondo's brother and Westbrook. As it's being reported, Lakers guard Rajon Rondo said his brother William called Russell Westbrook trash and nothing more, and gave him the Damian Lillard wave when the Rocket star asked what he said. Rondo said his brother didn't say anything more, and he's hopeful there will be no discipline. So you can kind of understand how much the Laker blowout was getting to the Rockets when something as simple as your trash and a wave goodbye drove Westbrook to kind of go to a place. And listen, and I'm looking at this video right now at the end of the game, watching LeBron talking to every Rockets player, giving them a hug, saying something to them. That's the level of respect that the Lakers have. And I was actually questioning if there was going to be a handshake at the end based upon that little scuffle between Rondo's brother and Westbrook. But it's good to see that both teams have finished the series with respect for one another. So that's good to go. I want to give you this as well, man. I want to give you this, one of these right here. It's a legacy race between LeBron and Kawhi. Whose legacy is really hanging in the balance more in this? Is it LeBron or is it Kawhi? Both who have had tremendous success with multiple franchises and winning championships with multiple franchises. This would both be their third franchise, and this will kind of be like the second for Kawhi being the leading player. But what do you think legacy-wise this next conference finals does for either superstar?
This championship moves the needle quite a bit for both of them. I would say I misspoke earlier. It moves the needle for Kawhi a little bit more because he's coming off of a championship. So having back-to-back championships and finals MVPs with 2 different teams is very impressive, regardless of if you got Paul George to go with you or not, or whatever the case is. Same thing with KD. He was 2 for 2 his first 2 years in Golden State. Yeah. Regardless, we know that was the cheat code. He still got credit for those 2 chips. So LeBron has a little bit less to gain, if that makes sense, because Kawhi is just moving the needle a little bit more. But this just, signs, seals, and delivers LeBron's legacy just to bring 1 championship to Los Angeles. If he does that, especially this year, this narrative of this year with the pandemic, with Kobe, with the China stuff that happened before the season even started, to playing in the bubble, to, it just goes on and on. For him to win this chip means a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And probably on par right there with the Cleveland championship for him,
Yeah.
realistically.
And there's a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation prior when Kawhi won in Toronto. The amount of things that you spoke about Durant and the Warriors, and obviously, there's a lot of questions about what would have happened to Kawhi's legacy had the Warriors been fully healthy. Had and if it were fifth, we'd all be drunk. But if Durant doesn't tear, obviously, or get injured permanently on that, and if Klay Thompson is able to hold steady and not tear his ACL, the question is, would they have been able to sustain it and win? And then what does Kawhi do from that point? But one thing we do know is that before Kawhi came to the Clippers, he told them up front that you don't have enough. And the acquisition of Paul George was the big move, right? Oh, looks like we lost him. So we'll get him back. But the acquisition of Paul George was one of the biggest moves that the Clippers had. And so this is the time to see if it's paying off for them. And we already know that we have AD locked up. We know what our roster is going to look like going forward. Once LeBron essentially retires, we know we're going to build our entire offense off of around AD. But for the Clippers, it's right now. Both stars, Kawhi and Paul George, their next 3 years are the most critical that they're going to have going forward. Let me run through some of these. Let me go through some of these questions here. Anaket Mohan, Marcus versus Keith to decide who the better twin is once and for all. And I literally can't wait, man. They have both been really just good for their teams. And it just, it just all rivalry aside, it's good seeing, those two still in the bubble, still doing their thing and contributing to their teams. I honestly believe that we do have the better twin. I believe that we have the one who is who's more consistent. I do believe we have the one who fits his role better with their team. And really the chemistry for the Lakers is just on an all-time high right now, which, not to say that the Clippers is not, but it's nowhere near the amount of interaction and the amount of unity that the Lakers have. And I think that is actually boosting Morris and giving him the confidence to be him. He's not just a role player right now. He is a substantial necessity in the Lakers offense and defense. Bro, I don't want to hear it. Give LeBron the MVP immediately. D-Million. We all know that LeBron should have been the MVP this season. I don't know why we are not able to calculate postseason run into it. But if they would have waited on the vote, I don't see half of the people voting for Giannis the way that they did in the regular season, knowing that LeBron was preparing himself for a long-term finals run. And so here we are. Blake St. Clair, the losing twin, gets exiled. That would be insane to watch. Jason Jeter on Periscope. I know the Clippers might have overall talent, but no question we have the best chemistry in the NBA. And if anybody understands how important that is to have chemistry, Kawhi does. He understands that with the Spurs and having that cohesion and chemistry with Tony Parker and Ginobili and Duncan. And part of the reason he got exiled from San Antonio was his inability to play into the culture. There was something that was going on with him. He got injured, played a couple games, and he sat out the rest, and they ended up shipping him off because the chemistry mattered. He gets to Toronto, and Toronto had already had great chemistry. Of course, DeRozan gets shipped out in the trade, but they're still Kyle Lowry, and they still have Serge Ibaka, and they're putting together this team that is really built on culture. We the North, the whole idea. So he existed in that culture. But the Clippers have always been in this position where they're trying to get cohesion. We saw and we heard about how much Blake Griffin and Chris Paul, Lob City was going to be. But you never felt like they were on the same page. Of course, later on, after the split, you find out how much Blake Griffin and Chris Paul weren't getting along. And I'm sure that if we were to take a step back from this team 2 or 3 years from now, we'll hear a lot about what happened in the bubble, how the team truly felt about Lou Williams, the whole nine, right? But at this point, you can visually see on the bench and on the court the level of respect that the team has for each other in the Los Angeles Lakers, far different than any other team in the bubble. Jason Jeter said that's why we will win this series. It's going to come down to how much they believe in one another. Think about how many shots that caused us to get into that got us out of a tough spot in the playoffs and got us a finals win. Think about the Robert Horry shot, a team player who did what they needed to do to win. Think about the Derek Fisher shot. Think about the Meta World Peace shot. These are shots that are just cemented in our minds in playoff history for the Lakers lore. And we know that if you're going to have a championship run, it's going to require not just other players to step up, but other players to have the belief from the superstars in them that give them the ability to perform when it matters most. And if there's any team that is built with surrounding, supporting cast around two stars who believe in themselves and are being fed and edified by these guys, it is the Los Angeles Lakers, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Blake St. Clair, prayers for DG. Keep the candles and the incense burning. Blake, the prayers are working, my man. And hopefully he'll be able to get it going against the other team. D Million calling in now, Lakers in 6. Y'all mark this down. Periscope, D Million is saying that the Lakers are going to win in 6. The non-LeBron minutes will be very critical against the Clippers. Absolutely. Alex Caruso is a top 5 defensive guard in the league. And you're honest. You're true. You're right with that, Annika. It has everything to do with Rondo being able to sustain the second unit while LeBron is off. And we saw in this series the emergence of playoff Rondo. But the difference in this is that Rondo's IQ could pick the Houston small ball lineup apart. It was easy to drive. He knew where to go. He knew what to do. In fact, tonight there was a play that I tweeted about where Rondo's on a fast break. He clearly has 2 wing players in the opposite corners on the three-point line waiting for the pass, and he bypasses them both, goes to the rim, and tries to draw a foul. He ends up missing the shot, and then, of course, LeBron comes in, and he ends up getting the foul. But the idea in Rondo's mind is long-term play. Let's get these guys in foul trouble. They're already struggling. Covington with 4. James Harden had 5 at one point. Trying to get these guys into foul trouble because it's going to mean more when they're trying to make a run to save their lives in the end. That's playoff savvy right there, man. That's a mindset that thinks about experience. And that matters when you're running a second unit, because the second unit's just waiting to shoot. He's thinking about how can we make sure that when LeBron gets back in and AD gets back in, we can put them in a position to take us home, as opposed to trying to get into a shootout with a highly offensive, explosive offense like the Houston Rockets. Blake St. Clair, 6 players in double figures, and here's the key word, again. And when you see the word again, especially coming from Blake, because Blake holds us to a high standard, and I appreciate him for that, it means that there is consistency happening across the board. The six players are the players that you would expect. All the starting lineup with Morris, Davis, James, Green, and Pope, all of them in double figures. And then Kyle Kuzma coming off the bench, 3 of 6 from 3, 5 of 9 from the field, 4 of 4 from the free throw line, going for 17 points. The irony behind Kyle Kuzma's 17 points is out of the 6 double-figure scorers, he was the only one with a minus in the plus-minus category, going -3. Why is that? Because the starters were majority getting the bulk of their run going in the beginning together. When Kyle Kuzma came in, he did a lot to try to keep the offense going, staying afloat. But that's normally when the Rockets got into their rhythm and their groove. But knowing that Kyle Kuzma can score double digits when the rest of the bench is failing in their production, then that's a great thing that you want to see. Caruso made the difference defensively off the bench, but Kuz made the difference on the offensive end. Russ is just too sensitive. His tenacity was double-edged sword. James Michael. Yeah, and it's hard. You know, you gotta be able to control that. We've seen players in the NBA with the same issue. Gary Payton was one of those guys who played with so much intensity, but it did kind of play against him at the wrong times. Meta World Peace, or Ron Artest as we knew him, same way. And sometimes, just being honest, Rondo tends to have some of that, depending on how far underneath his skin the other team gets. But we'll see. How come after we defeat a team, talking heads would say they're trash and we took care of a weak team? James Michael, it's part of the narrative, right? And the reason why is because, and I can't blame the talking heads, because when you look at everything, this is what everybody's looking at. They're looking at how much explosion do you have available on your roster, meaning how deep do you go, and how consistent do you play? Those are the two things. Now, the reason why they haven't really been able to fully commit to the Lakers not being a great team is because they know that every time they say that, the Lakers have proven it. But they have been skeptical about our number 1 seed. They've been skeptical about our road record. They've been skeptical about AD's numbers. They've been skeptical about a lot. And every time we keep performing. On the opposite end, they keep throwing all of their affirmation onto the Clippers, because the Clippers meet the criteria for the formula that they believe makes a championship run. If you're putting up, just think about how the Pistons won versus how the Lakers lost. And everybody looked at the Lakers and said, this team is stacked to win. And we got to those finals, And the Pistons ran us out the building. Why? The difference is that the formula for the Lakers made sense. Championship experience, having a great leader, having the roster, great coaching, great front office. That's what we had. In the Pistons, it was just Detroit. It was just Chauncey Billups. It was just Rip Hamilton. It was just a bunch of guys put together, and those bunch of guys came out and they beat us. And this is the idea that we're having with the Lakers. And the hard part for us as Laker fans is that we're better than those Pistons. We have an AD and we have a LeBron. But when you look at the formula, we're surrounded by a bunch of guys that nobody else essentially wanted. There's not people out there who are looking for Caruso out of the G League. That was us. People didn't look for Caruso until he started getting an actual contract in some minutes. People weren't really looking for Danny Green like that. That's why he was available so late into the season. People weren't looking for KCP like that. People weren't looking for Dwight Howard like that. People weren't looking for JaVale McGee. Look at the people that we have on our roster. And this is what we're saying. Even when we had all of those young guys and we traded them all and kept Kuzma, there was discussion amongst who would we rather have, Kuzma or Ingram, or Kuzma or Ball. And when the front office made the decision to keep Kuzma, people questioned it because the roster says you need a secondary scorer to help LeBron. And Ingram would have fit that category. The issue is that you need someone who's able to cut. You need somebody who's able to essentially play well with Bron. And so Ingram does not play well with Bron. It showed it statistically. It saw it all season. And Ingram is a tremendous player. But the roster, as LeBron says, is built differently. And talking heads don't know what to do with that. With a team that is built different. A team that has a player like a Ben Wallace and Dwight Howard, who's just big, muscular, doesn't shoot well, but gives you all the energy that you need and plays his role well. You don't know what to do with that. You don't know how to give that kind of positive affirmation to that roster because it goes against everything you know. But the Lakers are built different, and it's showing in games like this where small ball becomes a question and everybody hypes up and thinks it's going to go 7 games. It ends in 5. Portland Trailblazers come in as the hottest team. People like Charles Barkley says it's going to be a sweep. People saying that if the Blazers get in, it's going to be the toughest 8 seed. Lakers take care of it in 5. It's because we're built different and nobody knows how to properly analyze the way that we operate in basketball games. The bubble suits the Clippers. They can fit all their fans into the crowd with room to spare. The long delay shouldn't be as much of a factor in this series. Less teams left in the bubble, so more availability and practice facilities, time, and space. And we'll see how it's going to go. I don't know how they operate with that. I don't know who gets more time and how they work that out, but you're right. As the bubble begins to dwindle, you see less and less people, and it just leaves more and more space for people to get stuff done. And let's just stop for a moment and give a hats off and a hand clap to Coach Frank Vogel, Phil Handy, Jason Kidd, Lionel Hollins, all of them, for just a tremendous job coaching this team to the Western Conference Finals when everybody during the summer was saying the front office was crazy, they didn't have it together, all of that. There was so much that was happening in the summer, and the coaches navigated through that. And even after losing on opening night the way that we did, where LeBron and AD didn't show up in the fourth quarter, look at us now in the Western Conference Finals doing work, taking care of the best defensive team in the playoff, taking care of the best offensive team in the playoff, and doing it in literally doing it in 10 games, which really should have been a 14-game series. Why is Quinn Cook not getting PT? Not even garbage time only. Only knock on Vogel right now, the guru. No, the difference is that in the playoffs, as you go forward, your rosters have to shrink. This is more part of the things with the roster that they were talking about. So you're not gonna. There had to be an odd man out essentially. You knew Devontae Kakak wasn't going to play. You knew Giannis's brother wasn't going to play, and Antetokounmpo. So there had to be a third player who did not play. And when you look at it based upon who's available, J.R. Smith has championship experience. You keep him on the roster as a just in case. Dion Waiters is a playmaker who has shown that he's able to get his own shot during the scrimmages, who played a little bit better than Quinn Cook. And of course, size matters the further on you go into the playoffs. And so Quinn Cook was the odd man out. He's still there. And I believe there's a provision that if one of your players is out for the rest of the playoffs, and you can interject another person in, which is where Quinn Cook will be in there. He's still in the bubble, just not available to play. It's one of the reasons why you saw tonight Tyson Chandler, who was essentially was there, but he was in street clothes because he's not eligible to play essentially because the roster has already been kind of shortened. But he could be called upon in a future game had something happen to one of their players, and so that's where Quinn Cook is at. If you're asking me, I would have made the same decision. Even though Quinn Cook has championship experience the same as JR has a little bit more length, a little bit more size, and has played with LeBron longer than Quinn Cook. And you kind of take the good with the bad with that. Obviously experience matters, but JR hasn't been playing particularly well in the bubble. So they took a gamble, and so far it's paid off. We haven't even really needed Quinn Cook, to be honest with you. Seems like AD has weakness against four hydrants like Tucker and Harden. Fire hydrant. I'm not sure. Not sure what that means. Leonard Buchanan, is Giannis leaving Milwaukee? Not sure. He met with management today, according to Chris Haynes. And so to talk about his future, I don't know. There's lots of speculation about that. But to be honest with you, I'm sure that most of that stuff will come out after the playoffs, going into the next season. D Million, Kobe gave him the keys in his last tweet, and he needs to bring it home. Absolutely. And it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough, even to Kobe standards. The Clippers are no pushover. They're not an easy team. They're one of the better teams. The issue with the Clippers is this. We know that if they were clicking on all cylinders, they'd be almost unbeatable. What makes us feel more confident is that they've had a chink in the armor for a while, and they can't play consistent, even with Lou Williams not hitting. What scares us is that what happens when you have all of them clicking at the same time. It's going to be up to the Lakers and the defense and the perimeter defense of KCP, of Caruso, of even Rondo, keeping those guys in check. We want to keep Lou Williams right where he's at. You're not going to do much with Kawhi. He's going to be what he's going to be. Even with Harden playing the way he played, he was still scoring at his average, right around 28 to 30-something points. He was scoring his average, okay? But keeping Westbrook in check. Our job will be to keep Paul George in check. Here's going to be the difference. You can't lay off Paul George. Westbrook is horrible from three, but you can't lay off Paul George. But what's good is that Paul George is nowhere near as fast as Westbrook, so you can press him up on the perimeter a little bit more. So there's a lot of opportunities for the Clippers to actually beat us if they operate well. It's going to be up to the Lakers to make sure that they keep their weaknesses exposed and don't let those guys get consistent. Kawhi has less than 10,000 career points. He does. Cam Smith from Periscope. He has less than 10,000 career points. And the reason why is because Kawhi is he just picks and chooses his spots, which is so weird. But he has a way of making things work. Majority of his career was with the San Antonio Spurs, where it was not necessary to be as a consistent shooter with Tony Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan. They played a certain way. Kawhi was not needed for half of that stuff. But they did coach him up in his mid-range, and he's almost unstoppable from the mid-range. He gets inside that three-point line, and he goes up for a shot. You know he's probably going to make it 9 times out of 10. So it's going to be very tough for the Lakers to get in there, but we can do it. Don't remind me of that meta shot. I broke a mirror jumping around the house. That meta shot, Kobe passed me the ball. Huge thing, but Kobe gave him the confidence to believe that. And he shot that ball and he made it. Trevor Ariza has made big shots. Jordan Farmar made big shots. Some of us have forgotten this, but Sasha Vujacic had to make huge free throws in one playoff game, and he did it because Kobe fed them the belief, and that's what LeBron has been doing for most of these guys. I'm gonna take this out because I don't even need the headphones anymore. Protesters have blocked an NBA media bus asking for help from LeBron James. Protesters are chanting Black Lives Matter. That's a tweet from Tim McMahon. This is on Disney property. That's strange. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I doubt it's going to make a difference beyond tonight because they're going to probably get those people out of there. I'm just going through all of these tweets from other people as well. Twitter has had going off strength of schedule early in the year. Hater scare. Yeah. I got to disagree with you there, man. Being from Detroit, that defense was historic, but keep cooking. The defense was historic, but nobody was picking the Pistons to win. That was my point, is that they were built different. That Pistons team was a tremendous team, but nobody picked them because it didn't fit the formula. And in those days, the formula was, just going to that D100, the formula was, if you don't have a direct superstar, you're not going to win a championship. That was the dialogue the entire playoffs. We obviously had ours in Kobe Bryant, but nobody really knew who the Pistons were. Nobody knew was it Billups? Was it who was the actual general of that team? But it didn't matter because they weren't built off of that. They were built off of team chemistry, playing defense. They knew each other well, and they had big shot Chauncey Billups. They had big shot, man, and he was able to do what he did. And they won. And I'm saying this is the same thing with the Lakers. People don't understand that we're not built in the traditional sense. When you look at the Clippers roster, it makes sense. You look at Lou Williams, 6th man of the year, 1 year. You couple him with Montrezl Harrell, who's now 6th man of the year this year. Both tremendous, consistent scorers off the bench, great scorers, great defensive players. Well, one of them, and then you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in your starting lineup, and then you started adding pieces. Reggie Jackson, you get the Morris twin. You just start adding people into the lineup, and every time they added a roster spot, it was like, man, they're getting stronger and stronger because in their minds, the more pieces you add, the better it is. But they didn't calculate chemistry. They didn't calculate time playing together. And they didn't calculate leadership. Kawhi is not a person who brings a team together. That's not his job. He doesn't even look to do that. And right now, the discussion is who's the leader of the Clippers? Who is the actual leader? We know that Kawhi is going to be the closer. We know that Paul George is going to be the scorer. We know that Trez and Lou are going to be coming off the bench. But they don't know who the defined leader of that team is. It is defined from the beginning who the leader of the Lakers are. From the time that everybody was signed and LeBron pulled everybody away for a private workout before summer camp, you knew who the defining leader was, and we're built different. And I think that's going to make a difference. Best coaching staff, period. I hope they pay Phil Handy. The Nets want him. Can't let him go. You better believe that front office is going to do whatever it takes to keep this front office together and that coaching staff. I'm sure they're going to have some people who are going to get offers that they just can't refuse. Jason Kidd is probably going to be gone at some point because there's going to be too many coaching vacancies to overlook him. But you better believe they're going to try to give him an offer. Been a long 10 years, man. Only team to take advantage was Golden State. We back now. Step aside. Listen, I'm telling you, man, we got to prepare ourselves for this next round because it's going to be crazy. Do you think Dion plays next series pending health? I think he might, but we'll see. I think he means short, stockier players built like a fire hydrant. AD struggles with a bit. Oh, yes. Because AD's game is not really built for muscle. That's LeBron. LeBron loves a Tucker. He loves a Harden being on the inside because he's going to abuse them, which we've seen multiple times during the series. If he decides to go to the cup, who going to stop him? Who going to check him? It ain't going to make a difference. And we've seen him constantly get fouled, and sometimes he'll get an and one. But for the most part, he goes in there, does what he has to do, and he has to do it against 2 or 3 other players. The Clippers are a great team, but every time guys come available, they think they tinker with their chemistry. Yeah. Cool that LBJ mentioned Ball has energy on his walk-off interview. Absolutely. That's true. Kobe was supposed to have 6 rings and freaking Tayshaun Prince ruined it. And let me tell you something, guys. There is no championship that hurt me more. This hurt me. That Pistons win hurt me more than the Celtics win. And the reason why is because I didn't even know who these players were. I didn't even know who Tayshaun Prince was and Rip Hamilton. I'm like, who's this dude playing with a mask and a headband? And these cornrows. Who is this guy? And watching that team dismantle our Lakers the way they did is what I'm hoping that the Lakers do in this next round and dismantle these Clippers. So is Pat Beverly the Clippers leader? If so, they are cooked. Yeah, I don't know if Pat Beverly is, but I know Pat Beverly versus Rondo is going to be a sight to behold. Listen, guys, we had a great show tonight. Of course, we lost our boy halfway through, but you guys in the chat kept the energy going. And just kind of putting everybody on the same wavelength about what we're looking for. Tomorrow is going to be a very early game for the Clippers. I'm not sure how that schedule worked out, but 1 o'clock their time is going to be for you guys in California, 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. I'm not even sure who's going to be watching that game. But one thing to know that is if Game 7 is necessary, this is based upon Mike Trudell, Lakers reporter on Twitter. If Game 7 isn't necessary for the Clippers and the Nuggets, then Game 1 of the Western Conference Final would be on Wednesday, September 16th. If Game 7 is necessary, of course, you push it back 2 days. Game 1 would be on Friday, September 18th. What my fear is, if I'm being honest, my fear is that the Clippers don't win this next game. If they get into that elimination game, I think all bets are off. I don't know who comes out of that series. But the hope is that the Clippers do what they got to do this next series and get it going. But we don't know. The Nuggets have come back before. The Clippers have lost a 3-1 lead before. And so we underneath Doc Rivers, that's my point. Not the players, but they had a great roster and still lost 3-1 with Doc Rivers as the coach, I believe. So we'll see what happens. So Shades of Warriors Raptors last year minus the injuries of star players. Yeah. Rest up, watch some football, get ready for Clippers Nuggets. There it is. I appreciate you guys, man. This has been a great show. It's 11 o'clock my time. I'm gonna go down to Toyota Center and just wear my Braun jersey and just roll around for a couple hours and just see if anybody's up and wants to have a counseling session. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you on the next one. Either it's going to be Wednesday or it's going to be Friday, but we got a few days off. Enjoy your rest, and let's get our Twitter fingers ready for a Western Conference Finals showdown. Hopefully Clippers and Lakers. I'll check you guys on